We hear people say, "I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious." The mindset is common. Many shy away from formal membership in worshiping communities, from expressions of doctrine, and from commitments which groups require of their members. Those of us who are members of churches may find this an odd way to talk. I think this distinction, commonly expressed by many, misunderstands religious communities and spiritual practices. When we use these terms, we're not talking about two different things, but aspects of a single thing, the life of faith. Spiritual growth is an essential element in all Christian traditions, and it is at the heart of an ecumenical sensibility, the desire to make visible the unity Christ willed for his church. Spirituality exists because believers and even non-believers, though they may not know it, have a yearning for meaning, for God. This yearning has created practices over time, well-developed disciplines that help guide and form believers in their life in the world and in God. There are many pioneers in spiritual practices whose writings and stories have come down to us through history. They've given us advice, encouragement, the whole programs of spiritual discipline. They remain a rich resource for us all. Recent generations have gained a new appreciation for the schools of devotion within the Eastern Church and the Protestant families of faith. All build on the great tradition of the Church in order to offer to believers practices and a language to express their life in faith that has nurtured believers for centuries. Spirituality is not just a collection of practices. It's an attitude that affects all that we think and do. It's an orientation, a direction followed by believers in drawing closer to God. It takes shape in where we direct our yearning and our inquiry, in what we open ourselves to receive, to whom we address our pleas and our thanks. Christian spirituality is directed toward the person of Christ and his will expressed in Scripture. If we want to respect, to understand and appreciate fellow believers from other traditions, we will need to learn to listen to how they express their faith and how their spiritual practices are rooted in their traditions. Now, Christians have always contended for the truth. And when we do this seriously, we will not always agree. This means that the task of unity needs a larger context than simply propositional truths. In spiritual ecumenism, we resort to a unity of purpose and deep identity to press on towards the goal of unity. Diversity is fascinating, but by itself it simply divides. And diversity, when it hardens, can become division. Spiritual ecumenism means that the journey to unity is not just a matter of the head, but also of the heart. Pope John Paul II said that ecumenical progress needs a conversion of the heart. It means to draw wisdom and encouragement from the experience of others. It means to ground ourselves in the love and the will of God. We need then to find simple, doable practices that are compatible with how we learn and express ourselves. We can find some of these resources in familiar places. Under skilled guidance, we can study and use the great schools of prayer and the works of the masters of the spiritual life. But accessible to us all are those resources that we use every day, every week. Our hymnals and worship folders, prayer books and devotional aids that allow us to share our tradition and to study the tradition of others. Ecumenism is an attitude before it is a task. Spirituality is like singing. It helps us find our voice. It forms, feeds our yearning for God and for our unity in Him. To read in the spiritual tradition of another is to learn what makes them tick. We identify deep commonalities when we do this, and the differences will surprise and delight and give us something to ponder. To deepen our openness to God in spiritual practice opens us to others. It undergirds learning and appreciation of other Christians and helps us find new ways to serve, to grow together, which are the goals of ecumenism. It is clear that the closer we draw into Christ, the closer we will be to each other.